It's the fall of 1978. What do you remember back in the fall of 1978? How many years ago was that? 43 years ago. What do you remember about that? Do you remember anything? How many of you had kids at home back then at that time? I don't remember much about the fall of 1978. I remember that I was hired to go to the seminary for the Oklahoma Conference 43 years ago. And I remember I was in school in Texas, but that's about it. Why can't I remember better? Because my mind is worthless? Have you ever noticed that you can't remember things sometimes? I had 2 doctor's appointments this week, and both of them I had the wrong time. But I figured it out before I got there. But I thought I was remembering better. How many of you have ever lost your car keys? How about your purse or your wallet? Or your cell phone? Or the remote control device for the TV? We don't always remember. Have you ever left Walmart and left some of your food there? Have you ever left some of your food in the bag? It's hard sometimes to remember. The 4th commandment starts out with the word, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And why we do communion is because we have a very faulty mind. We do not have the ability to always remember. So we need to go over things over and over and over again. I don't know how many times I've gone over Philippians chapter 1. I imagine thousands of times I've read that chapter. And I can tell you pretty much what's in the chapter, but still, I do what? I forget. And we come here to the communion service, and it's a time to remember what Christ did for us 2,000 years ago. There are 3 things that we do. We won't do the foot washing today because of COVID, but we do that, and the foot wash, as we find in John 13, is an idea of servanthood. You know, how many people in Washington, D.C. want to be servants? How many people want to grow up to be a servant? And you have a picture here in John chapter 13. Christ is with his disciples. And the disciples are not high on the pedestal of society at all time. But when you'd go into a house, everybody wore sandals, and it'd be the proper manners to take your sandals off, and then the host or the hostess would provide someone to wash your feet. It's like today, if you go into an Oriental house, what do they expect you to do with your shoes? Take them off. If you're married to Janelle, what do you think that she expects you to do? Also to take them off. But I'm not very good at it. In other words, there's a custom that was being done there, and it was done by a servant. You would go to the Oriental. How often do you think the Emperor of Japan or the Emperor of China worked as a servant? Here we have Christ, the creator of the universe, our Redeemer, and he's choosing to wash the disciples' feet. And it takes the disciples by surprise. And what he's telling the disciples is, as we go through life, do not look to be number one. Look around and see people around you that need help, and it's your duty to try to be a service to them. You are not looking to be number one. You're not looking to be at the top. You're not looking to be up there. You're looking to serve other people. That's the first call of Christianity. Love your neighbor as your what? Self. Very difficult thing to do. And here with the foot washing, Christ puts the garment around him and he washes the disciples' feet. And Peter is moved. And all the disciples are moved here by that act there, that he is washing their feet. That Christ, who they thought was going to be the Redeemer of the world in a physical sense, and they find out a Redeemer doesn't wash somebody's feet. After the crucifixion and at Pentecost, then they begin to understand that. So the reason the Adventist Church does foot washing is because also it says here, in verse 15, I have set you an example that you should do it as I have done for you. So it's been told us to do it, even though it's not our custom to wash each other's feet. It's just a reminder to each of us that we are to take on the role of servanthood. And when you do that, I believe in this world everybody's looking for happiness. And the only way you find happiness is through the idea and performing and serving other individuals. That is where happiness is found today. Then we also do the bread and the wine. And the bread symbolizes Christ's broken body, and the wine his spilt blood. And that's to remind us that our salvation is totally from him. It is nowhere else. It is found in him and the sacrifice that he made. As you contemplate on the sacrifice that Christ made, that has a tendency to, not a tendency, it will change you. Because you see what he did when he didn't have to do it, when he chose to come to this earth to die for you and me. And so when we partake of the bread and the wine, we need to remember that. It's very difficult for some of us to do, though, because some of us have been Adventists all our lives, and usually we do communion 4 times a year. COVID has thrown that kind of in a monkey wrench. If you go to the Catholic Church, how often do they do it? Every service. And sometimes when you do the same thing over and over and over again, it becomes mundane. So therefore, it behooves us to remember, put our minds out of neutral, and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? Is it just because I came to church and they expect me to do it? We need to remember why we are doing this. We remember the sacrifice that Christ has made on this earth for us. And if we can meditate on that, then we can start the road of life and walk it, serve others, and look at Christ, and our lives will grow. In the Adventist church, we believe in open communion, and so anybody can partake of the bread and the wine and the foot washing. And at this time, we'll have the elders come forward, however we're doing this, and we'll do the communion service now, the bread and the wine.